I stood the new starter upright and set it down in the valley area and laid the battery cable in on the stud and tightened this nut down to 8 foot-pounds while kind of holding up on the cable. Check your cable, make sure it's not green fuzzy or otherwise got a problem with the contacting area. Once you got the nut tightened down, snap the cover back on it. To keep problems from arising back there. Check the engine block for it not being shiny if it's all gristled up. Hit it with some real fine sandpaper to clean off any white oxidation so the starter will ground properly. Install the 2 starter bolts. They tighten down to 35 foot-pounds and route the wire underneath the main harness. I transferred the lock from the old plug into the new one, so I locked it back in to this bracket and plugged it in. Take a piece of wood or plastic and some brake cleaner and slowly clean off these intake ports. Free them from carbon and any residual residue. Pull the stuff away from the paper towel filled holes. And make sure no large debris has fell down in there. And clean all those up. Then pull these O-rings out of the intake plenum and degrease all of them. And pull the throttle body O-ring out. Install a new one. Install new O-rings in the intake. I've sprayed the intake off with some brake cleaner. I just took a lint-free rag and went over the ports and the flat areas, removed loose particles. I'm not digging any of the carbon out of these chambers, just leave them alone. It's been there for years, it'll be fine. Just anything loose around the very opening. And stick the new seals in there. Just don't want stuff falling down on top of the sealing areas. And I've got the heads cleaned off around the intake ports. Pull the paper towels out and make sure there's no items down in the ports that shouldn't be there. Loose items. Once all the seals are pressed back in, I've got little notches in those slots to hold them in there. Make sure they're all down flat. And your guards are out of the intake ports. Make sure none of the cables are blocking where the intake's going to set, particularly the battery cable and starter wire. Make sure there's no particles loose on the heads around the intake ports. And then all of the paper towels are out of the ports. And it wouldn't hurt to look down into them to make sure there's nothing's fell down into them. It'll be a mistake if you don't and something's fell into one of them. Take and degrease the back of the throttle body anytime. Make sure it's flat and the gristle's off of it. Blow off this throttle flap. I don't recommend cleaning the throttle body. These things require a special procedure to set the air volume. That's beyond your average person's scope. Without a scan tool from the manufacturer, the intake, plane them up, and guide it back down in, make sure there's no problems with it. And one thing I may point out is you just want to clean the surface off and leave all the carbon down in there alone. If you want to clean that, take it to a garage and have them use an injector cleaner. It'll dissolve it in. Other than any loose things you can see right around the opening. Make sure any of the injector plug-ins are outside of this outer edge. Know the intake's going to slide along that transmission fill tube bracket. And want to get the bolt holes as close as possible to in line with one another when I set it down. It's not dragging these seals up out of it. Be sure not to break any of the nipples or anything off the intake. Put it in there. Just like downtown. Probably going to run into that battery cable a little bit back on that corner. That's alright though. Start getting the bolts started and tighten them from this center up two, then the back two, then the first two, then the last two in the back. And change this front throttle body seal anytime. If you wanted to, you could run a drill brush over the intake bolt heads if they're as rusty as these are, and replace the ones that might have got rounded or stripped. And I'm going to be applying a drop of blue Loctite onto the first few threads of each bolt. Looks good. These bolts will tighten down to 75 inch-pounds. It's down, but pretty much a little past about hand tight, lightly. All 10 bolts are started and hand tight. Just use a 1/4 inch drive and run all 10 of them down first before tightening any of them, so that they all will be lined up. Now start from the center and then going from the center of front two, back two, forward two, rear two. Once you've run them all down, go back over them again. The center ones will loosen up and snug them down to 75 inch-pounds, or at least make sure they're snug, not loose. And go ahead and put these side brackets back on if you had to take them loose. May use the opportunity While them brackets are removed, to plug the injectors back in. Pretty easy to get at. They're pretty much foolproof where they go. Be sure and get them started straight so you don't pin the blades down in there. And the latch is facing the valve cover. And I'll go ahead and bolt the transmission stick back onto it. Start clipping any wire harnesses undid back into place. Put these front rubber hoses back on the valve cover. And route this evap harness back through its holders and plug it in. And start picking the evap out of here and the fuel line. Being careful not to bend it into a crimp. And checking for dirt in it or anywhere. Make sure that this is clean. Put these hose clamps down on both those rubber hoses. In this fuel line, you need to put a drop of clean motor oil on this. I usually spread some gasoline around on it from out of the pipe to make sure it's clean. And make sure that this line is perfectly in line with that pipe so you don't damage the O-rings inside of it. Keep it clear of the mounting bracket. And just walk it on. Wiggle a little bit. Keep pushing till you hear the click. And maybe a little past. And pull on it slightly. Wiggle it. Make sure it don't come back off. There should be less than 1/8 of an inch between this second ring and the opening of that bell. Make sure it stays on there. It's good. Lock it back down into its holder. And put the safety catch back on it. And go ahead and hook the evap line back together. Not breaking the service port off. Slide the hose clamp back on it. Looking pretty good. Took an air hose and blew these particles out of this throttle body. Pull this original seal out. The wire mesh facing up. Hole off to the right there and one at 11 o'clock in these metal tabs. So I'll stick it back in that exact same way. Make sure that screen's flat. And use this top rubber pin as a centering for it all. Just push it in there kind of gradual. The bolts on the throttle body, I'm going to blue Loctite those, and they tighten down to 75 inch-pounds as well. Pretty much all the 10 millimeters on the plastics, 75 inch-pounds. Alright, check for any problems. Any injectors not fully seated, plugged in. Any plug-ins off. The only one that should be unplugged is a mass airflow sensor for the air cleaner. Fuel line's connected. Throttle body's connected. Nothing leaking antifreeze or broken. I stuck the air filter back down in it. Lay the air cleaner and put the hoses back on the valve pin cover nipples, rocker cover, whatever you want to label them. And feel free to put the negative battery cable back on at any time. I didn't take this one off, but I can do it. Top of the air cleaner was a pain. You might have to pick up on the bottom air box and insert it fully into those ears and lock it down top. Plug the mass airflow sensor back in. And any fasteners that been taken loose. Slip these hoses back onto the rocker covers. Tighten your hose clamp up on the throttle body and route them through their guides. This one here was just slipping on and off real easy. That's not so good. And I'll take either put a clamp or a zip tie, something around it to tighten it up on that nipple. It liked it. It's tight now. Alright, it's pretty much back together. If you had the battery unhooked, go inside, turn the ignition switch on, then back off and wait 10 seconds and listen for this throttle body motor to actuate to find its fully closed position. I didn't have the battery unhooked, but it'll probably do it anyway. I don't know. Be looking for fuel leaks too, if any problems occurred there. Normally you'd hear the motor do something in the throttle body moving, and it'll center itself. And then next I want to watch this fuel line connection. Turn the switch on again. Look for any fuel dripping out of it. If not, go ahead and try the starter out. I don't see any fuel dripping out, so I'm going to go ahead and try the starter out. It works as advertised. There's no missing, so there must not have been any chunks got down in the cylinders. Do smell a little oil burning new. Oh, it looks pretty good. I'll put the engine cover back on it. Just make sure none of the injectors are dripping gas or anything. Be alright. And all the clamps are tight. Looks good. Tighten the gas cap down and you're back in business.